Hello, my name is Lola. Welcome to my channel. Today we will be talking about Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. First, I want to start with some disclaimers about this video. I wanted to say that I don't personally hate this book, nor do I hate Kelly Hart. I actually had a lot of fun with this book and I really like it, and I just wanted to point some things, more of like my personal opinions of things I didn't really like about this book or that could have been different for me personally. Also, I wanted to warn you that there will be a lot of spoilers for the book, but I will try to keep the ending intact, so I don't plan on talking about the last 100 pages or so. So, let's begin. Alright, I wanted to start my commentary on this book with the city of Zilvarin. So, our main character, Sarah's Fame, is from this city called Zilvarin, and the first thing we know about her is that this city is very, very hot. It's like pretty much a desert and it has two suns, so it's constantly day. There is no night, there is only sun. It is very, very hot and harsh weather. Our protagonist, Ceres, is described as someone who is very pale and has dark black hair. I think this was a problem for me at the very beginning of the book. I feel like this was one of the first things I picked about it that I didn't like. So when you talk about a character in a book that lives in a desert area, you need to talk about the effects of the sun, because, and for the same reason, when Callie describes the characters in the cold, she talks about the effects of that cold, but she doesn't seem to really understand the side effects of living in a place with that harsh of a sun. So uh, the fact that Ceres is pale really, really bothers me. And that is because melanin is not, just something that defines if your skin is lighter or darker. Melanin is there to help you deal with the sun, to deal with sun damage. And I know that there are people that live in either deserts or like areas with a lot of sun exposure and are light skinned, but we also have sunscreen nowadays and other forms of weather protection, and either way, sun damage really gets to you. So I feel like Sarah should be at least 10. She should not be super, super white pale. And I know that there are like kind of some reasons as to why she's technically pale. Like I guess that there's a reason on the book that explains why she's kind of different, but I don't feel like this is enough, because even if she was born a very light-skinned person, she should have sun damage. It makes no sense. The only thing that the author really describes about the sun is how, she breathes sand particles and that burns her lungs and that her lips are cracked. But there should be even more extreme things about it, because it's a place that is so hot that it has two suns. So I feel like I didn't really like the way that this was, specifically because in our world, in the real world, we have desert societies, and desert societies have their specific ways of dealing with the sun. And when you take something inspired by it, I feel like you should research it a bit more, because I get it. Fays are mostly European folklore, so most of the book that is not in Zilvarin takes place in an European setup, so I guess it makes sense for the author to write European, like kind of European characters that have very light skin. I don't bother with that part. What I have a problem with is that she chose to create a desert society, and she also chose it to give it kind of European design as well. The city apparently is no different than, I guess, a medieval city, in the same way that the cities of the Fey world are, and the people are also fair skinned. And I have a problem with that because it feels like she wanted to pick something inspired in the desert societies of our world, but she wanted to populate it with different people. So it felt very weird to me, especially because I'm not complaining this about, I mean, not besides, the cultural points of this, I feel like it's not realistic. How would you survive that amount of sun damage and still be pale? It makes no sense. And it felt like it was just, well, I want this character to be pale, but I want her to live in a desert, so I would just say that she was pale living in a desert. And I don't like that. One of the other things that I don't like is the description of Ceres being malnourished and her ribs showing. That is very wrong for me, but I will talk about this later. Let's continue talking about Zilvarin specifically. Um, Another thing that I disliked about Zilvarin were the golden armors of the the guards. So we have this queen. She's called Madra, and she's supposed to be like a very tyrant queen. And she has this guard, and her guard wears golden armor. So the book says golden armor. It doesn't specify that the gold in the armor is solid gold. But if you ever dealt with gold, you know that gold is a very, very soft material. Like you could bend gold coins with your teeth, and if you ever wanted to have a completely, a ring completely made out of gold, it would bend in your hand because gold is soft. Gold is not a strong material. So the idea of these guards having solid gold armor was very weird to me because then their armor would be horrible, and the idea of them having golded plated armor felt even weirder because I don't know, it sounds so absurd to me. And she says that it's because Madra is so rich and so powerful, but like you would not be able to have a completely golden plated armor. Like if those guards are fighting, if these guards are going on the desert and there's supposedly sand everywhere, that armor would be completely scratched. And I don't think there's a character that has the amount of money to make basically disposable armor that would have to be replated every single day, because that is what would happen. Those armors would be very, very damaged. And she explains them as being super hard and strong, and that would not be the case, because if they're gold plated, it doesn't matter how strong the material beneath is, the gold would be scratched all over. So if you're making a book about an alchemist and materials like metals are an important thing, you should think about that, because those details kind of broke the immersion for me. Um, Also, speaking again of Madra, I really disliked Queen Madra as a character because she doesn't really make any sense, honestly. The whole thing about her is that she's this very, very cruel queen, and she's a tyrant, and she has those golden guys that she sends, to do her bidding, and that she kills peasants at will, and she's just very, very, very cruel. And then we have the third. So basically, Zul'Varen is divided into those districts, and one of those districts is the third. And our protagonist, Ceres, lives in the third, which is the poorest and most isolated district. It is actually quarantined, so no one can enter or leave. And Ceres usually, climbs the walls. But this is the thing. If the third is such a horrible place to live, and Madra wants everyone there dead, why doesn't she kill them? So we have not a clear explanation of why the people in the third are um, put into this situation. We know that from what Sarah tells us, that I guess it was her grandparents that decided her fate. So maybe, I don't know, they divided the people of the city, and then her grandparents by luck ended up on the third. But then again, it also kind of feels like the people on the third were the revolutionaries. Like she kind of implies that that was the case because her mother was a revolutionary. But then again, it's not very clear why these people are in the third and why Madra wants to kill them specifically. We don't get an answer for that. And then uh, the way it works is that if Madra is such a bad, like she's such a bad person, she really wants the third killed, she wants them eliminated, it feels weird to me that she hasn't. And the reason for that is because the people on the third are completely useless to her. If you take an example of another book that has a similar dynamic, let's talk about the Hunger Games. So, in the Hunger Games, the world is divided in the way that there is the capital, and there are 12 districts, and the protagonist lives in the poorest of those 12 districts, which is the 12th district, and they are coal miners. So, they mine the coal that is used by the capital. And because of that, the capital sends some resources their way because they are miners. They give coal to them, so there's a purpose. Some other districts are farmers and stuff like that. But we know that this is not the case for the third. There is nothing that the third produces that Madra needs. Like, we don't really get a description of what people on the third actually do because it feels like to Ceres they just like breed and get born and starve basically. It's very weird. We know that there is Elroy who has a forge and she works in the forge, but she still has no money to survive, I guess. And then we know that there is a bar and the bar is full of liquor and beer, which also feels very weird because if the place doesn't have enough water, how can they make beer? Making liquor, making beer is something that takes a lot of water, so it makes no sense that like they have enough water to spare for that. And drinking makes you dehydrated, which would also be very bad if they have no water. But then again, Madra keeps the third even though she has no reason to, and she also gives them resources. Like Ceres describes that Madra gives them a water ration that is only 16 ounces a day, which is definitely not enough for a person to live. And that out of every 10 girls on the third, 7 of them are sterilized as to not have children. And it feels like such a weird thing to do. I feel like personally there's no good reason why Madra has not destroyed the third, and it feels like the author just wanted to put a bunch of, like I said, senseless cruelty into the situation just to develop the character of Ceres. So a lot of things in the book feel like they have no reason to be that cruel. They have no reason to be that bad. And I feel like the whole existence of the third in Zilvarin is one of them. And because of that, I feel like Zilvarin itself, it's not really well constructed. We also don't know a lot about it, which is okay because I guess Ceres doesn't need to know everything about everything, but she really seems to not know a lot, and this makes Zilvarin kind of empty. Like when Ceres gets to the Feywild, she describes absolutely everything, but Zilvarin, we don't really get a description. And this could be because maybe living in Zilvarin is a traumatic experience and she doesn't really talk about it that much. But reading these first chapters in Zilvarin was kind of hard. The book really just picks up, after she meets Kingfisher, basically. So, in the second part, I wanted to talk about what happens when Ceres goes to Revelia. So, she basically traverses this Quicksilver pool with Kingfisher, and she arrives at Balakan's castle. So, then we get her like discovering things like snow and unlimited water, and everything's so new and so different. part of the book is actually interesting. Like, we learn a lot more about the universe and how things are, and it's very interesting. And I got really curious to learn more about it. We learned that the Fae were kind of cursed with a vampire curse, and then they broke free of the curse, but they still have like those vampire teeth, those elongated canines, and we also Ceres tries to learn a couple other things, but whenever she asks Everlane's like, "Oh, later we'll discuss this," but then later never arrives. And then she's presented to the king, King Bellicon, and I really don't like King Bellicon because again he falls into the theme of senseless cruelty. Uh, he just wants to kill Kingfisher, like he really wants to kill Kingfisher. There's no good reason. I mean, I guess there is, but there's not like a super good reason for him to want to kill Kingfisher. We learned that apparently Kingfisher did a massacre, like he blazed the whole city, and then Bellicon wants to kill him, I guess. And we learned that Bellicon is supposed to be kind of his dad, you know, but not really. He's his stepdad. And then a lady, like an old lady that we don't know who she is or why she does that, saves Kingfisher from the fate of being killed for a reason that we also don't really get in the book. And then Bellicon basically demands that Kingfisher needs to be exiled to like the war border of Ivelia, which is not really a punishment because later on we learn that his house, like his state, is where the war is happening. So basically he's just sending Kingfisher home. And we also learn that apparently Kingfisher's state is also warded against Bellicon specifically, so Bellicon cannot enter there. So it feels like a very weird place to exile someone. But again, Bellicon is very weird. And then we learn that Ceres is an alchemist, which is a very important and rare thing in this world. Like, there has not been an alchemist in, I guess, thousands of years. And she's very important because Bellicon wants to use the Quicksilver pools to go all around, you know, the other worlds and basically get resources. So, but to traverse the Quicksilver pools, he needs relics to get his armor, his people across, like his guards and stuff. And then he says, well, Ceres, basically what you have to do is that you have to learn how to be an alchemist and create relics for me, for my people. And Ceres basically, I guess, curses at him because she has no preservation instinct. But then that's it. And then she goes to the library and starts researching about alchemists and learning a little bit more about how the Fae world works. But Kingfisher is like, no, that is not how you should do it. You should learn it in a forge. And then he tries taking her to a forge. And then Ceres tries to escape and they run off together. This part feels also a little weird because Kingfisher makes her run to the place that he was originally exiled to, and then when they run there, like when they arrive at Kingfisher's state, Bellicon doesn't try to get to them. And I know that apparently Bellicon is warded against entering the place, but I feel like he could at least try, you know, he could at least have sent some people to try and get Ceres back because she's a legendary alchemist that people haven't seen for thousands of years. But no, he just doesn't care. And then Kingfisher says, oh, Bellicon also doesn't care about the war. He doesn't care if everyone dies. And this feels very weird. How can the king of a place don't care if everyone dies? I mean, I guess, oh, he doesn't care if poor people die. Right, he's a tyrant. But he would die as well if the war was lost. So it sounds so weird. We get an explanation for this later, but I guess it sounds weird that no one thinks it's weird that he doesn't care at all. You know what I mean? So Bellicon is just bad for bad's sake. the same as Madra, and that is not well written for me. That feels very all over the place, and I dislike it. Alright, in this third part, I want to talk specifically about Ceres and the problems I had with her as a character. So, the first thing I don't like about Ceres, I've already mentioned, and it is the fact that she looks like this. Like, this is the special edition of the book, and this is how she looks, living in a desert. That is weird to me. I don't like it. But then again, she has other things about her that I also don't really enjoy as a reader. So let's start with one of them that is again related to her appearance. Uh, there is a very common trope these days that authors don't really want to write a character and say, oh, she was hot. So they make it so that the character is starving, so that she has a conventionally attractive body type. Like, oh, the character was starving, that's why she's so skinny. I didn't make her skinny because I am a bad person that wants to only create attractive characters. There is a reason, and it is because she was starving. Uh, this is very bad to me in the first place, just as it is. But Saris describes that she is so malnourished that she can feel her ribs. You have to be really bad to like have your ribs poking out as an adult woman. And besides that, she's also dehydrated. So the effects of that level of malnourishment and dehydration make it so that Ceres she shouldn't be a pretty sight. There is a misconception that if you just stop eating, you will just lose weight. That is not the case. Your body needs food and water to function. If your body doesn't have enough food and water, it is not going to function properly. If Ceres is not malnourished and not dehydrated, she doesn't have dark, luscious hair. She likely, like, it's very likely that her hair falls off or that she has like skin problems. And she's probably not strong enough to begin with, because if you're malnourished, you cannot form muscle. That's like very basic. And that's not what happens in this book. So another thing about Ceres that I don't like, that is not realistic, is the fact that she has a fight in which she kills two of Madra's guards and cuts off the hand of another. So these guards are supposed to be very strong, very trained with their amazing golden armor. And I don't have a problem with her fighting and killing them, because she has like the whole thing that her mother worked with revolutionaries, so Ceres is trained in combat. My problem is the way she does it. So she's at a bar with Karen Swift, and he hands her a cup of liquor, and she says that if she drank the whole cup of liquor, she would not even survive going home. She would likely fall and break her neck. And she drinks, I think, half of it, so she's very, very, very drunk, because it's very, very strong liquor. And then she remembers that she has not ate that day, and she also has not taken her water ration. So she is dehydrated, very, very hungry, and also drunk. And that is how she fights those guards. So if you're able to do that to begin with, to kill two people drunk, dehydrated, and starving, she must be like this. Wow, she must be so strong or smart or whatever. But then as the book progresses, that is not the case. Like, she's actually in a lot of situations very, very dumb. So basically, when she gets to Evelia, when she meets Kingfisher, she gets very, very helpless. She basically complains all the time, like she's constantly complaining, and she is presented a tub of water to have a bath in, and she feels bad about doing it because her brother and like her father figure back home don't have water. And this is like very weird to do because I feel like if her brother, if Hayden or Leroy had access to limited water, they would enjoy it. Like they would definitely enjoy it. And it feels so weird that for someone who's lived in such harsh conditions to say, oh, I don't care about water, like I don't want it, I want to go back. This feels weird. She should not be that resistant on taking a bath. And then when Kingfisher takes her to the forge, the first thing she does is that she tries to put her hand on the molten ore. Like, we know that she's been working in a forge since she was 10. I'm assuming she's at least 18, like she's an adult woman, I guess. I think we know her age. I think she's supposed to be 21 or 22. So she's been working on a forge for 10 years, and the first thing she does when she's with Kingfisher is to try and touch the metal, like the very, very hot melted ore. Why would she do that? And also, you can't even say because it's not even Quicksilver, because she has like this strange quote Quicksilver. It's not Quicksilver. The only possible explanation as to why she does that could be because she's like, I guess, lightheaded from being near Kingfisher. But I don't think there is a man in existence that would make a girl try to touch melted ore. Like, it feels so weird, and it feels like she suddenly doesn't know anything because she kind of has to be battle trained again because I guess she's not as good. So very weird. So I've talked about Ceres, so it's only fair that now I talk about Kingfisher. So Kingfisher is a very complicated character in this book because he's supposed to be morally gray. And I don't personally have a problem with a character that is morally gray or like a character that is beyond that. But this book is not like a dark romance where it is implied that the main character is a criminal or is a mafia boss or is someone that does bad things. The book really, really implies that Kingfisher is the hero, and it really, really feels like the author wants you to believe that all of the bad things that he's done them because he wanted like for the greater good, or that everything that he says that is wrong is just him being misunderstood. So the book creates this narrative where Kingfisher is the hero, where he doesn't do anything bad. And at the same time, Kingfisher has a very, very weird consent problem with the main character. So basically, he and Ceres strike an oath, and because of that oath, they are bound together. And she has to do everything he says, like absolutely everything. And of course, he doesn't use it to make it like her dance or stuff. But he does use it to make her do things that she doesn't want and that she specifically tells him that she does not want to do. And he breaks her consent and he tells her that it was for her own good that she had to do those things. Which she replies, well, if it was for my own good, couldn't you have explained them to me in a way that I would understand them? And the way that this specific conflict develops is that Kingfisher doesn't really seems to take any real accountability for what he does. Like he stops doing it and eventually he releases Ceres from his oath a little later than he should, in my opinion. But then they don't really, it doesn't really feel like they have an honest adult conversation about consent. And it feels like Fisher would do it again if he could. Like, it sounds like he's not remorseful about it that much. And Ceres is like, well, I really hated it. And I feel like this could have been a bigger conflict to show the reader that Kingfisher really did a bad thing and that he should not take away Ceres's free will, but it's very light. Like there's not a lot of conflict around this, and I just like that because I need to compare this with what happens that is very similar in Akatar. And I'm not saying that Quicksilver is like a copy of Akatar. I think those are very different books. These two are very different. but they do have some similar elements. And you can see that Quicksilver took some inspiration from Akatar, like the whole mate things, the fact that it's like a winter court, the magical tattoos, and the fact that they can talk like into each other's heads, like they can telepathically talk. I know Sarah J. Maas didn't invent those things, but those are like very heavily Akatar things. And in Akatar, the character who takes away the consent of the main character is pretty much the villain. So it feels like Kingfisher should not have done that and be passed as like, well, he did that, but I mean, I guess it's over. Like we don't really care about it. Kingfisher himself says that they lived thousands of years, so they don't really, fight a lot. This felt very wrong. And another reason why this felt very wrong is because Kingfisher is supposed to be really old. He's supposed to be like almost 2,000 years old. How can you be that old and you still like think it's okay to take away the free will of a 20 something, like 20 something girl should be like basically a child to him, and he's just extremely old. He was supposed to be wise about it, but he is not. And I don't like, the way he acts. That made the character feel a little wrong to me. Now for this final part, I wanted to talk a little bit about the woman in Quicksilver. So, Quicksilver doesn't have a lot of female characters, and I'm not saying this as in number because I feel like the number of women and men is very similar. I feel this is in representativity, on the book. Like the female characters that we have that are not the protagonists. So first we have Madra, which is one of the villains. Then we have Sarah's mother, who we don't really know much about because she's dead. Then we have Everlane, which is Balakan's daughter. We have Talana, which is a healer. We have a witch that only comes through the last 100 pages or so. And Danya, and that's it. And those characters have so little influence on this book. Like, we barely see Madra. Like, we have, I think, if we have 2 or 3 pages of her, that's a lot. Everlane also is only present in the part of the book where Ceres is in Balakon's castle, and during that time she's represented as like this very princessy girl that wears beautiful dresses, and I feel like she's described more than once as being on the verge of tears, so it's like very stereotypical princessy girl. Uh, then the next woman that we have is Talana, which is a healer, and she also has basically no presence. She's like a side character. She only appears when someone breaks something, and she barely has dialogue. Then the witch also barely has dialogue and only appears, I guess, very, very, very late in the book. The only other female character that is not Ceres that has a huge impact on this book is Danya. And I specifically want to talk about Danya. So we have basically 3 major scenes with Danya. When Danya appears for the first time, we figure out that she's part of Kingfisher's, I guess, personal guard. They're like his wolves. They have a name, I think it's Lupo Proelia, and she's part of that. And I think she's the only woman. If there's another, she has no dialogue or name. And we have basically these men, they are all like in the war tent, and Danya sees Kingfisher and she says, "You're a traitor." And he says, "I am not a traitor, but I cannot explain it to you. You have to trust me." So she's supposed to be part of his personal guard, like she's supposed to be like, apparently they fought together for hundreds of years, but she's treating him like they're like teenagers at his school. And also Kingfisher, as most of the other Fae, is oath-bound, which means that he cannot physically lie. So if a guy that you have known for hundreds of years and trust with your life disappeared for another 110, came back and said, "You have to trust me, I can explain," and he also physically can't lie, it feels weird that you would convince yourself that he is a traitor. But Danya does so regardless. And the first thing she does, because she's very violent, the book really wants you to know that she's very violent, is that she grabs her sword and tries to kill Kingfisher. But then Ceres, who is watching, screams, "No, stop!" And Danya's sword, like, basically turns into a bunch of little splinters of little shards and gets stuck to a wall. This is basically the first major interaction with Danya, and Sarah just keeps saying that she's like, "Oh, I hate her. Oh, she's so violent, blah blah blah," and she explodes the girl's sword. Which, alright, fair. She was trying to kill Kingfisher. But then later on, we figure out that since Ceres can talk to the Quicksilver and Danya's sword has little pieces of Quicksilver in it, Ceres gets her sword back and tries to reforge it into a new sword. And while she does so, she talks to the Quicksilver and she says, "Well, I want you to become like a magical sword again." And the Quicksilver says, "Well, I want you first to give me a song as payment for becoming a sword, I guess. And I also will decide if I want to bestow any magical power on the sword based on the blood of the warrior who holds me." So then Ceres does that sword, and she does with the help of Lorif, who used to be a bard and is now part of Kingfisher's guard, because Kingfisher found him dying and gave him a piece of his soul, which is a thing that happens, I guess. And then they make the sword. Lorif helps her. They make like a cute wolf design on the sword. And when she finishes the sword, she gives it to Lorif, and Lorif accidentally cuts his hand on the sword and spills his blood on it. And then he's like, "Wow, so sharp." And then he sits and just starts singing a song out of nowhere. And he sings this amazing ballad about how Kingfisher killed the last dragon, which is how we learn he killed the last dragon. And then the sword, which has Quicksilver on it, talks, and everyone can hear it. Lorif, Kingfisher, and Ceres. Everyone with the exception of Carrion Swift, who just keeps looking at people and being like, "What are you talking about? Are you guys insane?" Which is very funny. I really like Carrion Swift. And then we learned that the sword basically chose Lorif and said that, like, and everyone was like, "No, but you are Danya's sword." And the Quicksilver says, "I am no one's sword. Like, I am my own metal, I think. And now I belong to Lorif because I decided that he is worthy." And Lorif is very, like, apologetic, like, "No, I don't want to do this." But then he's like, "Well, can I have a fight with like a piece of sentient interdimensional metal? So I guess that's it." And then, which leaves us to our second situation with Danya. So Danya finds out that Lorif has her sword, and she has a temper tantrum over it. Those are not even my words, the book describes it as a temper tantrum. And she tries to grab Lorif's sword back, I guess her sword. But when she does that, her hand explodes. Like, literally, her hand explodes. Which was very weird because Ceres also touched someone else's sword, and she only lightly burned her hand doing so. It felt very intense that Danya lost her whole hand over it. But I mean, I guess the sword was like more sentient and more powerful. And then that's it, like her hand explodes. And everyone is still pissed at it, even though she just lost a limb, because everyone thinks she's like, "Oh, I can't stand you, you just complain, you are so violent," etc. So Kingfisher literally says that to a, I guess, don't know how old, at least 500 years old grown woman, grown fae in the case. And he says, "If you behave yourself, I can ask Talana if she can grow you a new hand." And then Danya is like crying because she's in pain, and she's like, "Alright, I accept." And it feels very condescending, because if everyone hates Danya so much, how did she end up in Kingfisher's guards? No, they were supposed to be friends, they were supposed to be allies, warriors and stuff, but apparently everyone hates her. And then Kingfisher does a portal, and then he basically Ceres and Danya go first. And when they arrive, Ceres sits at her seat at the table, which is the seat that she always sits in. And Danya starts saying that, first of all, a human shouldn't even be in the same table as them. And second, she shouldn't be in that specific seat of the table by Kingfisher's seat, because that's the seat for the lady of the house, and she is not the lady of the house. And when everyone arrives, she's like, now you see. But everyone's like, I don't care. I guess Kingfisher likes her. We don't really care about that. And Danya is really pissed. She's like, why do you keep treating this human like that? So it gives off kind of a vibe of jealousy, but it feels so strange to have this discussion while this woman has lost her hand. Like, I cannot imagine a situation where you lost a limb and you are still complaining about the human. Like, if she doesn't care that much about Ceres, she should just leave Ceres alone. And I don't know, Danya is so poorly constructed. I feel like her only reason in this book is to piss Ceres off and to act as a mean girl. And that third major scene with Danya, which is I guess the last of her in this book, is that they need a witch. Like I said, there's a witch. I don't remember her name right now, but there is a witch, because the witch like only shows up for the last 30 pages or so. But then they need to find a witch, and then they take Danya and Ren and Kingfisher. They go to find those witches. So they find the witches, and the witches agree to help them. But while they're finishing things up, Danya makes a snarky comment saying that the witches really should help the Fae, because the witches left Evilia, leaving the Fae to clean up their messes, because apparently there is beef with the fact that the witches are responsible for the dragons, but at this point it's hard to tell what's true. And then because of Danya's comment, everyone starts to fight. And by the way, Danya has a new hand at this point. And then, because of Danya's temper tantrum, again, they had to clean up her mess. So, what is my problem with that? Most of the book, we just have Ceres, Kingfisher, and Carrier. That is like 400 to 500 pages of the book is just then. And then I feel like the first 50 and the last 50, we have some space for other female characters. There is so little women in this book. Like, there's so little of women's dialogues in this book. Like, I feel like this book could not even pass the Bechdel test, because I feel like the only time that Ceres talks to Everlane, she's still talking about Kingfisher. There's so little women. There's not a friend, there's not a sister, there's no woman figures. Even when they arrive at Kingfisher's house, the sprite, like the only name it's sprite is a man, like it's Archer. So it's very empty of a woman. And then the only representations of women that we have are extremely stereotypical. Like, Ceres is constantly angry, like all the time. Danya is also angry all the time, and it's very negative how they treat Danya. Like, Ceres calls her a bitch, and everyone basically treats her like a toddler, which is, I mean, I support women's rights and wrongs, but that is too much. Also, Everlane is very much like a little princessy, like she's very girly and stuff, and that is seen like is in a negative light, because Ceres is like, I don't do dresses, I do pants, and Everlane is like a dress girl and she's pretty, and that also feels weird. And Madra is also like not a princessy, I guess, a queenie girl, that she wears a lot of dresses and she's very pretty and she, you know, looks amazing, but she's also very cruel. So it feels like all the women in the book fall into those stereotypes of being like very angry, aggressive, or being, you know, emotional and like kind of useless. And the only woman in the book that falls from that stereotype is Talana, the healer, but she also has basically no relevance in the book. She has one scene where she explains about Ceres that the tattoos that she magically got on her hands were mating tattoos, but besides that, we have no voice, like we have no woman's voice. And that is so intense that basically everything that Ceres learns, she learns from men. Like she learns how to work in the forge with Eroi, which is a man. She learns how to fight with Ren, and when she was younger, she was battle trained by her mother's revolutionary friends that are not necessarily talked about as male in the book, but the implication is that they were men because I know there were smugglers and stuff. And I mean, it's very weird. Then, when she finally finds out how to work the Quicksilver, she doesn't find out. Carrion finds out, and I mean, I hate Carrion. Carrion is the single best character in this book. I will be reading Brimstone exclusively because I want more Carrion. But it feels like she's not even smart. Like it feels like the book makes her sound dumb, and all the other men are amazing and smart and calm and awesome. And yes, of course, there are the villains, but the men are portrayed in this book in a way, way, way more positive light than the women. So one of the final things that I wanted to talk about in this book that I feel like I've commented already throughout the video is I feel this book has some senseless cruelty. And one of the ways that this manifests is the way that sexual violence is portrayed in this book. I don't think there's nothing wrong with portraying sexual violence in a book, but I feel like the way that it's done is not good. For example, Sarah's mother's death is very, very, very strange. Like, she was a prostitute, so it makes sense, or if you create characters that are, extremely, they hate women and stuff like that, to hate on her because she was a prostitute. But it felt very weird. Like, I don't want to go too much into detail, but it felt very weird to have 5 Madras guards do what they did to her mother, like simultaneously, even though she was already dying. Like, it felt like, I feel like 5 people in the middle of the desert are just going to, on someone. It feels so weird because I don't know. I don't think she thought too much about it. I feel like at least one of them would have been like, guys, I think we're going too far, guys. I think we need to think about this. Or like that the people watching, no one would think this is wrong, and everyone would be like, yeah, that's it. That's what we should be doing. Like, and then after her mother dies, like the violence continues, and the only person to defend her mother is Elroy. It feels so whack. Like, are you telling me that there is not a single good person in Zilvarin? Like, everyone is horrible in Zilvarin at this point. Like, this is what she's trying to tell me. And like, every single guard is horrible, and every single man is horrible. It feels unconvincing because even when you have bad characters, you still need to have like at least a little bit of light in the middle of it. So it feels very senseless. I also don't really like that when they capture Everlane, one of the vampire lords basically says to Kingfisher, well, if you don't do what we say, we will endlessly rape your sister. It feels so strange. You could just say we're killing her. That would be enough. You could say, oh, if you don't do what we say, we're killing your sister. That would do it. You didn't have to hit us with the whole perpetual rape, enthrallment, vampire thing. It felt like the author really wanted to show, oh, look how cruel it is. But there's not a lot of, background for this cruelty because Malcolm, who's supposed to be like one of the villain bad guys, apparently he's immortal. So, I mean, I don't know, how much do you need to hate someone to say, no, I want to spend the whole of my mortal life, assaulting your sister just so you can feel bad? I don't know. I feel like we needed a little more background. I don't mind cruelty in books, but it needs to have a background. Otherwise, it feels like you're just throwing stuff at the character to say, look how much she suffers. Absolutely everything that could go wrong goes wrong, and that is not reality. Something needs to go right in this woman's life, For God's sake, like Ceres needs to have at least one thing that doesn't go wrong. So I wanted to finish this video by saying a couple of things that I really like about this book. Basically, Karen Swift. I love Karen Swift. He's an amazing character, like I said. He's very like weird and out of place. And honestly, he's the thing that keeps the book moving. Like without Karen Swift, the book would have no movement, would have no flow. And he's amazing, and he feels like he has a lot of personality. Not a good personality, but he has definitely a lot of personality. Also, I need to commend Kelly Hart because this book is very creative. A lot of the concepts of this book I have not seen before. Of course, a lot of them are not new, but I really love the idea of the Quicksilver. I love the idea of traveling through the Quicksilver. It felt so interesting, so new, so fresh, and I guess that's why I kept reading the book, even though I disliked a lot of things about it. And again, like I said, even though I have those very strong opinions about this book, I don't think this is a bad book. So if you ask me, oh, should I read Quicksilver? Yes, you should definitely read Quicksilver. I'm not saying it's going to be the best experience of your life. I'm saying you will have fun. And I guess at the end of the day, sometimes books are this, sometimes books are for having fun. Not every book needs to be the greatest masterpiece you have ever read, and I did have a lot of fun with Quicksilver. I thought it was very interesting. I thought I was curious about a lot of the things, and I am honestly very curious about Brimstone, who is almost coming out. So thank you so much for watching this video and coming this far. I would love to hear your comments. If you want to leave a comment talking about how you felt reading Quicksilver, or if you have not read it, if you want to read it. Thank you so much again, and that's it. Bye bye.